Now let's try a similar one with change in variable cost. Now I'll have this arranged in a different manner this time. So first, let me enter the parameters here. I want to test the impact of change in variable cost on the profits. So what all potential inputs do I have for variable cost? I have 25, I have 30, let's say 35, 40, 45, and then 50. I want to test these possible numbers on the variable cost and also check the final result based on these inputs. So where do I want to test it on? I want to test it on profits. So I need to link the cell on which I'm testing. Okay. And then let's make it bold so that it looks different here. And then select this entire set, okay, as if it's a table. Go to what if analysis, data table, and then this time all your input parameters are arranged in a row. Click on row input cell, and this time we want all these to be reflecting in the place of variable cost. So I click the row input cell reference as the variable cost, click OK, and here we have this. Well, in case if you want to test it out, okay, here we have got this result based on the point that selling price is at $70, sales volume is 75 units, and fixed cost is at 1,500. So considering this, let's say, what if the variable cost was 50? If it was 50, my data table says that I will break even. That means no profit, no loss. Let's hit enter and see. Well, that's the case. Well, what if the variable cost was 40? Data table says that it would be 750 as profits. So let's try. We have variable cost set to 40, and yes, indeed. Here we have 750. Don't bother with the change of these cells over here because both of them are directly linked to profits, but the rest of them do not change. Now I can make them look like a table, so all I need to do is select the cells, go to home menu, select all borders. These are the input parameters. I'll give it a color, let's say something like this, make them look bold, and here are the input parameters. And what are these for? Change in variable cost. Okay, so what could be the title for this data table? Impact of change in variable cost on profits. Great. So can we have a similar one over here for impact of change in something over here? Change in selling price on profits. Let's try this over here. Here we have, let me format this again as a table. We have all borders. I'll make this look bold, give that a background color and center. So here we have this. I'll make them go center. Yes. So in this way, Excel is actually testing it in the background. Excel is taking these values, putting it here, and copy the value, the final result, and paste it in the corresponding cell. And this is how the data tables work. Now moving on. So far, here we have one parameter and a result which considers all of the values remaining constant. But what if I want to simultaneously test the impact on profits based on change in selling price as well as change in variable cost? That means testing on both of them at the same time. Now let's try this over here. I have the space. I have these as change in selling price. Let's say I copy and paste it here. All right. And here I will say change in selling price. And let's merge these cells. And I would like to tilt the text in this way, rotate text up, and here we have. Next, I would want to test the change in variable cost. So I'll copy this entire thing, paste it here, and here we have this as a matrix. Now I want to test the change of selling price and the change of variable cost and its impact on the profits. So what am I testing it on? The profits. So at this corner, I put an equal sign, link it to the final result cell which I'm testing on, hit enter. I'll just make this look bold. Maybe I can also give it a different color, maybe slightly darker, and change the font color to white. Well, that's good enough. Now, while we have this, let's select this entire table. Now, come to Data menu, What If Analysis, Data Table. Now, this time, we need to enter the column variables as well as the row input variable. So, for row input cell, what is arranged in a row format? We have changes in variable cost arranged in row format, all the input parameters for variable cost. So row input cell reference should be variable cost, and selling price variables are given, or the parameters are given in a single column. So whatever column input that you have, that must be put over here in this selling price per unit. Click OK, and here we have the result. Now this is a good matrix. You can see, for example, what if the selling price is at 60 and you manage to have your variable cost at 30. This is the result, or this is the profit that you will be looking at. Now, what if you are not getting sufficient profits? Now, what if you barely manage to keep your selling price at 55 and the variable cost is something that you had underestimated? It's no longer 30, it is 40. So if the selling price is at 55 and you're selling at 40 a unit, that means for selling 75 units, you will face a loss of 375. Well, in case if instead of 75 units, you're selling 80 units, that's slightly different story here. You see, all the numbers automatically got adjusted. So here we have at 45 selling price and $25 as variable cost, you will get $100 as profit. So the break even is somewhere in between. So we don't see that. But what if, let's say, I do not want this at 30, but I want 32. All I can do is just come here, change this to 32, hit enter, the numbers automatically get updated. Now that's quite convenient, right? You can just sit in a meeting and just change any of these values. Anyone who comes up with any random number, let's say someone comes up and says it's 55 is ridiculously high, try it at 52. Just change this to 52 and here you have this. Now you cannot edit any part of the data table here. For example, I click here, I delete this, it will not work. I cannot change any part of the data table. You need to ensure that this one is always linked to the final output cell and you're mapping them to appropriate column or row input reference. Further, one word of caution. Whenever you have the final result that you want to test in, it should be in the same worksheet where you're using the data tables. Okay, the final result should be in the same worksheet. Similarly, any input cells that you're trying to work on. For example, here we were testing on change in selling price and change in variable cost. It is important that you have both these parameters or these cells in the same worksheet as the data table. So in such a way that any change you make here, it should be affecting the profits as well. So you should have the final result cell, the input cells all in the same worksheet as in the data table. Only then the data table works. Else it might give you some random results or maybe an error. Now let us explore some inbuilt tools in Excel that can help us with analysis. To begin with, let me introduce you to the goal seek function in Excel, which will be available under the data menu or the tab. Under this, we have what if analysis, and under what if analysis, we can find the goal seek tool. Now, as it indicates over here, it helps you find the right input for the value you want. Let us take an example. I want to set up a shop that sells chairs, the office chairs, and based on my analysis, I feel that $50 for each chair is a good fit. It's a cost-effective solution and quite comfortable chairs that I'm planning to sell. For this year, I intend to make revenue of $10,000. Now, I have a target over here and I have a unit rate or the selling price for each chair. Now, I would like to know how many chairs should I sell in order to achieve the target revenue of 10,000. Now, technically, we would do something like 10,000 divided by 50 and we get this value. But let's say we are using this in a model over here, and this should be an input value and not contain a formula. Rather, here we should have a formula which indicates sales volume multiplied by selling price per unit. This is the formula given over here. Now, based on this formula, I need to find out the value over here that can help me reach this, or rather change this 0 to 10,000. So for this, we go to what if analysis, goal seek. Now, there are three major components for this tool. First, you need to have a formula over here that can help you display the desired result or the final target output that you want. Second, you need to know what value you need. So firstly, let us set the cell which has the formula. It's this cell I'm looking at. I want this value to be at 10,000. Now, the third component is by changing with cell. That means of the three cells that are over here for calculating your total revenue, which cell would you like to change to get the desired result? So I say by changing the sale volume. So let me repeat that. You set the target for this particular cell, that is D5, and I want this to be at 10,000. Now, in order to reach to 10,000, what number should be entered here? That's exactly what we will ask the goal seek tool. So I click OK, and you see Excel automatically does the calculation here. Now, if you are happy with the solution and you want to retain this, click OK. And if you do not want to retain this, you can click on cancel, and whatever number that you see over here will be lost and it will be back to what it was earlier. Let me show you. I click on cancel and it's gone. But if I click on goal seek again, set this cell to 10,000 by changing this value. Mind you, let me remind you that the selling price is fixed at 50 and the volume is something to be determined to reach the target of 10,000. So I click OK, and here it is. Excel has determined it to be at 200. I click OK and we accept the values. Now let's take another example. We'll take it a notch higher. I would like to determine the break-even sale. So for this, we have, let's say, the variable cost. Now, whenever you manufacture any product, there would be some fixed cost and variable cost associated with it. Let's say, for example, it's a cookie manufacturing machine. The cost involved towards running the machine is fixed. Okay. Now, whether you must be baking 10 cookies or 20 cookies, it does not matter. If the machine has a capacity to bake 50 cookies at a time, now until the 50 cookies, the cost involved towards running the machine is fixed. You need that much of a fixed amount of electricity, which is there. But what varies is the quantity of raw materials or the dough or the yeast or the flavoring agents, water, and anything that you would add to those cookies to get 10 cookies or 20 cookies there. That's a variable cost. But the fixed cost is the cost involved towards running the machine, which has capacity to bake 50 at a time. So here, let's say the cost for manufacturing or producing each chair, the variable cost is 30. So with which? So the contribution would be selling price minus the variable cost. Now here we have the variable cost as 30 per unit. I multiplied with the total sale volume, and we have 6,000 as the variable cost. Now what about the contribution? It would be the total revenue minus the variable cost, or you can also have it as contribution multiplied by the sales volume. It gives you the same result. Now let's assume the fixed cost to be at 1,500. Now profit would be your contribution minus the fixed cost, and this is your profit from this business by selling 200 units of chairs at $50 for each unit. Now, I'm not sure whether I would be able to sell 200 units, but I would like to know how many units should I sell in order to reach to a point of no profit, no loss. You see, there is a variable cost of $30 for each chair, which is absolutely fine. So the more the number of chairs, the more the cost over here. Lesser the chairs produced, lesser the cost here. But the fixed cost is there as it is. So now I need to find out that volume, or how many chairs should I sell in order to cover up this fixed cost as well as the variable cost. So here I'll make use of the goal seek tool. I put goal seek set value. Now this is the value that I'm looking at, the D9. Let me clear this. So I click here. I want this to be 0 because when I say the profit is 0, that means I have breaking even. That means it's a break even. So no profit, no loss. So now by changing cell, I want to change the sale volume because I'm not sure if I would be able to sell 200. But at least to maintain no profit, no loss, how many chairs should I sell at the rate of $50 for each unit? I click OK. And it says 75. The moment I sell 75 chairs at $50 for each unit, I earn a revenue of $3,750. Now the variable cost is at 30 per unit. So for 75 units, it's $2,250. Let me click OK and show you. It's for 75 chairs, it's $2,250. Then contribution is the difference between the two. And fixed cost is already given at 1,500. So the difference between the contribution and fixed cost comes down to 0. So if I manage to sell 75 chairs, I return with no profits and no loss. And that's how we can make the best use of the goal seek function here.